You pull into the driveway and think, this is it. Palm trees, fresh paint, 4 bedrooms, a community pool, and a payment that just barely works on paper. After years of gray winters and tiny apartments, a Florida suburb feels like you finally beat the system. Then, the reality bill shows up. Insurance jumps from a little high to, how is this legal? One heavy afternoon storm sends water racing toward the curb, and you notice how often the drains back up. That easy commute the listing promised turns into an hour crawling past wrecks and construction. Property tax estimates climb again. Neighbors whisper about price cuts and houses that sit until the seller takes a loss. This is the side of Florida suburban life the marketing never shows. Florida still sells sunshine and new construction, big square footage, gated entrances, amenities that photograph beautifully. But in some suburbs, the real story is different. Insurance risk, flooding, long commutes, softening prices, and fragile local economies quietly turn dream homes into traps. Today on Discover the Nation, we are counting down 10 Florida suburbs facing a total housing meltdown in 2025. If you were thinking about moving here, or already here and wondering whether to stay put, this is where you slow down and look past the palm trees. While you're with us, hit subscribe to Discover the Nation so you do not miss our deep dives into housing markets everyone still calls hot long after the warning signs appear. Now let's head into the Sunshine State suburbs you need to think very carefully about before you buy.
Number 10. Homestead. We start at the southern edge of the Miami Metro, in Homestead. On paper, it looks like the perfect compromise. Newer subdivisions, more attainable prices, palm trees everywhere, and a straight shot up the highway to the Miami job market. For anyone priced out of Miami proper, Homestead feels like a pressure release valve. The place where you can finally get a yard, a driveway, and a little breathing room. Until you live the commute. Miami traffic is not a joke. Those morning and evening drives turn into long, grinding slogs on crowded highways that can stall with one wreck or one heavy storm. What looked like a manageable commute on a Sunday afternoon test drive quietly becomes an hour or more each way in real life. Add rising tolls and fuel costs, and a cheaper mortgage slowly morphs into an expensive daily grind that steals time from your family, sleep, and sanity. Then there is hurricane exposure. Homestead has already taken direct hits in past storms, and insurers remember. Premiums and deductibles reflect that history. You might have a house that meets modern code, but the price of wind coverage can still feel like a second car payment. When renewal notices arrive, the number can shock even longtime residents, especially if your escrow jumps and your monthly payment spikes without warning. Evacuation routes, shelter plans, and storm shutters become part of your normal checklist, not a distant theory. Not every part of Homestead looks like the glossy brochure. Crime and income levels vary from block to block. Some neighborhoods are stable and tight-knit, with families who have been there for decades. Others struggle with underinvestment, aging infrastructure, and property crime that wears people down over time. Schools and services can feel uneven, with some zones improving and others lagging behind. If you do not study the area carefully, you can end up in a pocket that feels very different from the model home you toured and the lifestyle you imagined. Homestead is not automatically a mistake, but it's not a simple Miami on a budget story either. If you're considering it, drive that commute all the way to where you'll actually work on a weekday, get real insurance quotes based on actual addresses, walk the neighborhood at night, and look at block-level data before you convince yourself the palm trees and price tag are worth the trade.
Number 9. Riverview. Next, we head back toward Tampa Bay to Riverview. At first glance, this is the Florida suburban dream turned up to maximum. Master-planned communities, new schools, fresh shopping centers, parks along the river, and endless marketing about lifestyle and community. For families priced out of central Tampa, Riverview looks like an obvious next step. But rapid growth comes with a bill. The first place you feel it is on the roads. As subdivision after subdivision opens, the same few arteries are asked to carry tens of thousands of extra cars. Morning and evening traffic on key roads turns into a crawl. Simple errands take longer. The easy commute promised in the listing becomes a daily exercise in patience in podcasts. Over time, that takes a real toll on quality of life. The cost stack is just as punishing. Newer homes here often sit inside communities with required homeowners associations and extra community development fees. Add those on top of a bigger mortgage, climbing property taxes, and the statewide insurance crunch, and your monthly payment can end up far above what you thought you were signing up for. One or two rate hikes, and you are suddenly house poor in a place that was supposed to feel like an upgrade. Stormwater and flood concerns add another layer of stress. When you pave over more land and add more rooftops, heavy summer storms have fewer places to go. Retention ponds help, but residents in certain sections still report streets that pond and yards that stay soggy long after the rain stops. Even if you are not officially in a high-risk zone, those patterns can influence your insurance and your future resale value. Riverview is a classic fast-growth suburb. It works beautifully on a brochure and feels very different at 5:30 on a weekday when you are stuck at the same intersection for the third light cycle. Before you fall for the model home, price out the fees, the insurance, and the commute. The meltdown here is not dramatic and sudden. It's slow, expensive pressure on families who thought they were buying breathing room.
Number 8. Deltona. Now we slide over to Central Florida, to Deltona. On the map, Deltona looks like a clever midpoint. You were roughly between Orlando and the Atlantic coast, near big highways, surrounded by affordable single-family homes. For remote workers, service workers, and families trying to stretch their budget, Deltona shows up in search results again and again as the best of both worlds. In reality, it often feels like you get the downsides of both. Deltona is heavily a bedroom community. The bulk of the higher-paying jobs live somewhere else: Orlando, Daytona Beach, hospitals, distribution hubs, and scattered employment centers along the corridor. That means a lot of people are on the interstate every morning and every night, battling congestion, accidents, construction, and summer storms that can shut lanes down quickly. Over months and years, the fuel, tolls, and lost time add up. Infrastructure has struggled to keep pace with the size of the city. Roads that worked fine when there were fewer homes now feel undersized. Drainage that handles an average rain can falter during a true Florida downpour. Some neighborhoods were clearly platted to maximize lots, not to create walkable, cohesive communities. You see vanishing sidewalks, patchy commercial strips, and long stretches where basic errands require a car trip. Financially, Deltona lives in an awkward middle zone. It is not cheap enough to fully offset the costs of long commuting and rising insurance, and it is not close enough to major job centers to support big city prices. When a household is already carrying car payments, student loans, and other debts, an insurance jump or major repair on an older roof can turn a barely manageable budget into something dangerous. Deltona can still work for certain families, especially those with stable remote income. But if you're banking on a low price tag and a simple half-hour drive to everything, you need to test that dream at rush hour and after a heavy storm before you commit.
Number 7. Kissimmee. Next, we swing into Kissimmee, the suburb that lives in the shadow of Orlando's theme parks. For years, the story here has been simple. Buy a little more house for a little less money, stay close to the attractions, and maybe even pick up a short-term rental on the side. It sounds like a perfect blend of suburban life and tourism money, especially when prices only seem to move in one direction. That double identity is exactly what makes Kissimmee so fragile. In many neighborhoods, you are sharing streets with a steady flow of vacationers. Driveways full of rental vans, pools packed on weekends, suitcases rolling out at dawn. For some owners, that is the business plan. For full-time residents who want stable neighbors and predictable nights, it is exhausting. The rhythm is check-in and check-out, not block party and school bus, and that instability matters when buyers start to think twice. Underneath the lifestyle clash is a harsh economic reality. A huge share of the local job base is tied to hospitality, tourism, and service work. Wages in those sectors rarely keep up with rising home prices, taxes, and insurance. At the same time, investors bidding on houses based on potential nightly rates helped push prices far beyond what local incomes alone would support. Now, as tourism growth cools and rules on short-term rentals tighten, you can see it in the listings. More price cuts, sellers offering credits, homes that once sold in days sitting for weeks while buyers run the numbers more carefully. Traffic is the daily reminder that you live in a tourist engine. The roads around the Karks are notorious during peak seasons. Commutes that work in off-season become miserable when school holidays and summer crowds hit. If you thought you were buying a quiet suburban life with an easy drive to work, the reality of theme park congestion can hit hard and make a slightly cheaper house feel much more expensive in daily time. Kissimmee can be the right move for a specific type of buyer, with stable income, strong savings, and clear expectations. But if you are imagining a calm, affordable suburb near the magic, you need to dig into how many homes around you were used as rentals, how many recent sales closed below the original asking price, what your insurance really will be, and how your budget holds up if visitors stop filling every house on your block as often as they used to.
Number 6. Cape Coral. Now we cross back to the Gulf Coast to Cape Coral. From the air, this place looks like a dream grid of water and houses, canals stretching to the horizon, boats tied behind tidy backyards, new construction everywhere. For buyers fleeing high costs in other states, a house on the water in Cape Coral feels like winning the lottery. The problem is that everything here is built on water and risk. Cape Coral is a city where flood maps, elevation certificates, and roof ages matter just as much as bed and bath counts. Recent hurricanes have shown exactly how vulnerable certain areas can be. Even homes that appear undamaged in listing photos may have gone through wind events, storm surge, or prolonged power outages that stressed systems and budgets. Insurers have noticed premiums and deductibles can be punishing, especially near the water. Maintenance is another hidden cost. Canal-side living means seawalls, docks, and drainage to think about, on top of pools, landscaping, and regular home upkeep. In a rising market, those bills feel easier because equity is climbing. In a softer market, they are just one more reason owners feel squeezed. If your job is not on very solid ground, carrying a large, high-maintenance property here can quickly feel like a gamble. Cape Coral is also, at heart, a bedroom and retirement community. Many residents rely on incomes from Fort Myers, healthcare, construction, service work, or out-of-state pensions. When local job growth slows, when construction cycles turn, or when inflation eats into fixed incomes, the strain shows up in missed payments, delayed repairs, and quiet discounting on the resale market. If you are dreaming about a canal view, you need more than a good feeling. You need hard numbers on flood history, insurance, utilities, and long-term maintenance. Cape Coral can be beautiful. It can also quietly melt your budget if you underestimate just how expensive water life really is in 2025.
Number 5. Port St. Lucie. Heading up the Atlantic side, we arrive in Port St. Lucie. For years, it was marketed as the calm alternative to the chaos of South Florida. Slower pace, golf courses, family neighborhoods, and prices that looked almost old-fashioned compared to Miami and Palm Beach County. That reputation drew in wave after wave of out-of-state buyers. The market here has been transformed by that migration, and not always in a good way. Now, as higher rates bite, you see more price cuts, more homes lingering on the market, and fewer bidding wars than during the pandemic frenzy. List prices that once jumped every month are flattening, and sellers who anchored to peak valuations are quietly adjusting expectations to get a serious offer. Buyers arriving with cash from higher-cost states bid aggressively on homes that local families once considered reachable. Prices rose faster than wages. Entire neighborhoods reset to values that make sense if you just sold a condo in New York or New Jersey, but feel impossible on a local paycheck. That gap turns housing into a fragile ladder that many longtime residents can no longer climb. Insurance and property taxes are turning into the second punch. Port St. Lucie sits in the path of regular tropical systems, and insurers have been recalculating risk with every storm season.
Homeowners who thought they landed a sensible monthly payment are hit with escrow shortages and premium hikes a year or two in. Add rising taxes as assessed values catch up, and the affordable house is suddenly anything but. The job base is improving, but still uneven. Plenty of residents commute, rely on service work, or work in sectors that can slow quickly in a downturn. When the economy cools or the stream of new buyers thins, you are left with a city full of homes priced for outsiders and a workforce that cannot support those values on its own. Port St. Lucie can still be a good fit if you have stable income and a long horizon. But if you are stretching to buy at today's prices, you need to ask what happens when insurance climbs again, when taxes adjust, or when you need to sell in a softer year. Otherwise, your quiet suburban escape can turn into a slow-motion equity problem.
Number 4. Lakewood Ranch. Now we slide over toward the Sarasota area to Lakewood Ranch, one of Florida's most famous master-planned communities. On social media and in glossy brochures, it looks like suburban perfection. New homes, manicured parks, golf courses, village centers, top-rated schools, and a carefully curated lifestyle. The question is not whether it looks nice. The question is what it costs you beneath the surface. Homes here often come with layers of fees. You are dealing with homeowners associations, community development fees, and amenity charges, on top of property taxes and the statewide insurance crunch. The base price on the builder's sign is only the beginning. Once you add assessments, upgrades, and closing costs, your monthly obligation can be significantly higher than you expected when you first walked into that model home. You can already see it in the listings: more builder incentives, more closing cost credits, and more resale homes cutting asking prices after a few quiet weeks. Properties that would have sparked bidding wars in 2021 now sit while buyers compare fees, insurance quotes, and totals before committing. Rapid growth is also reshaping the area. New villages keep popping up. More cars pour onto I-75 and surrounding roads, and once quiet intersections are now packed at rush hour and on weekends. That 10-minute drive to the beach, the mall, or the office can stretch much longer as the region fills in. You are paying a premium for convenience, then spending more time sitting in traffic that eats into family life. On top of that, you still live in coastal Florida. Insurance for newer, larger homes with expensive finishes is not cheap. Roofs and windows have to meet strict standards, and when the next major storm sweeps through the Gulf, underwriters will reassess risk. Even if your house comes through fine, the price of coverage can jump. Lakewood Ranch is not a scam. It's a high-end suburban machine that works very well for people with the income to handle all the carrying costs and the patience for the traffic. For anyone who is stretching to get in, it can quickly morph from dream to financial cage. Before you fall in love with the clubhouse and the trails, ask what your monthly number will look like in year 3, not just at closing.
Number 3. Poinciana. Next, we return inland to Poinciana, a vast planned community southwest of Orlando that might be the clearest warning label in all of Florida suburbia. On paper, it is everything a budget-conscious buyer could want: lots of homes, lakes, parks, and a price point that often undercuts other Orlando area suburbs. In reality, Poinciana has been straining under the weight of its own growth for years. The main issue is access. The community sprawls across a huge area, but there are only so many ways in and out. Morning and evening commutes can bottleneck badly as thousands of residents try to reach the larger road network that leads to Orlando, Kissimmee, and other job centers. When there's a wreck or a serious storm, drivers report epic delays that turn regular days into endurance tests. Infrastructure has struggled to keep up. New houses appear faster than road projects, drainage upgrades, or expanded services. Residents talk about overcrowded main routes, limited commercial options in certain sections, and a constant sense that the community was built for a brochure, not for the way people actually live once all the lots are full. Financially, many families moved into Poinciana when mortgage rates were low and optimism was high. As insurance renewals jump, taxes adjust to higher assessed values, and maintenance bills come due en masse built homes, that optimism gets squeezed. Some owners feel stuck between not loving where they live and not being able to sell at a price that lets them move without taking a punch. Poinciana is the Florida suburban trap in concentrated form. Big promises, big growth, and real limits on how much the physical and economic infrastructure can handle. If you are looking at any huge planned community in the state, studying what has happened here is not optional. It's a preview of what can go wrong when rooftops come first and everything else tries to catch up later. Number 2, Spring Hill. Now we head north of Tampa Bay to Spring Hill, a suburb that has long been marketed as the sensible compromise. Quieter streets, older trees, 3-bedroom homes with yards, and prices that look gentler than the hot zones closer to Tampa. For years, people have seen Spring Hill as a way to get space without completely leaving the urban orbit. But the math of that compromise is changing fast. Spring Hill sits far enough out that many residents face serious drives to get to major job centers. What looked like a manageable commute at first slowly stretches as more people use the same main roads and as growth fills in formerly open stretches along the route. Add in rain, school traffic, and accidents, and your reliable 45-minute drive can easily become an hour or more each way. The age of the housing stock adds another layer of risk. Many homes here were built in earlier waves of development. Roofs, windows, plumbing, and electrical systems may not meet current best practices, and insurers in Florida care deeply about that. If you buy a house with an older roof or outdated features, you may face higher premiums, limited carrier choices, or big upfront costs to bring the property up to standard. Spring Hill also lives in a county that has wrestled with everything from infrastructure lag to concerns about groundwater, sinkholes in certain areas, and uneven growth. None of those issues are uniform across every block, but they all influence how comfortable future buyers and lenders feel about the area. That matters for your eventual resale. If you are eyeing Spring Hill as a way to escape Tampa prices, do not just compare listing photos. Compare commute realities, upgrade costs on older homes, and insurance quotes for properties with the exact specs you're considering. A small monthly savings on the mortgage means nothing if you spend that and more on gas, repairs, and surprise insurance letters. Number 1. Brandon. Finally, we arrive at number 1. Brandon. On paper, this looks like the classic Florida suburb people picture when they say they are moving for a better life. Cul-de-sac streets, suburban family homes, and just close enough to Tampa that you can believe the commute will not be that bad. That comfort is exactly what makes Brandon such a dangerous trap for your budget. For years, Brandon took in waves of families priced out of Tampa. Builders filled every available corner with new subdivisions. Major retail centers made it seem like you were buying into a stable area where values would only go one direction. Then the cost stack quietly shifted. Insurance on older roofs and aging construction began to climb. Some streets are in low-lying spots where heavy rain exposes drainage issues you will not see in a sunny listing photo. Property taxes track rising assessments, especially in neighborhoods that have turned over at higher prices. Add association dues, and you suddenly have a monthly housing bill that feels closer to a luxury area than a middle-class suburb. Traffic has become its own full-time job. Brandon sits on corridors that feed directly into Tampa job centers, and those roads are choked most mornings and evenings. The simple drive you tested on a quiet afternoon turns into a daily grind of brake lights and congestion. Many buyers stretch to get into Brandon during low-rate years, betting that demand would always stay strong. Now, with higher mortgage rates, rising insurance bills, and more options in other suburbs, listings sit longer. Some sellers are cutting prices just to move properties that once sparked bidding wars. Brandon tops this list not because it is flashy or extreme, but because it represents the Florida suburban meltdown in its most familiar form. A place that looks average on the surface, yet quietly loads families with high fixed costs, long commutes, and a market that depends on everything going right. If you are considering Brandon, do not just ask if you can afford the payment today. Ask how it will feel when insurance renews,
taxes adjust, and you are sitting in traffic thinking about every other way you could have spent that hour.